Hey, it's been a while since I had an idea for the series, but welcome back to another installment of Storytelling Studies. You clicked on this title, so you already know what we're talking about today, so let's waste no more time starting. Now, clearly, the Covenant being a metaphor for a religious institution isn't particularly subtle. Their very faction name gives off religious connotations, their leaders are called prophets, their main goal is called the Great Journey, in which they all will quote unquote ascend to some super lovely, idealistic afterlife, and all the non-believers, will be, to use their own words, quote unquote, cleansed up by the sacred flame of the rings, which sounds terrifying. The latter in particular matches well with most religious descriptions of a negative afterlife, or what most people in the West would interpret as hell even, right? In fact, come to think of it, ODST isn't the only part of the Halo universe that has a resemblance to Dante's Inferno. While yes, there were originally only 7 rings in the modern array of rings, both the original Alpha Halo and its replacement have been destroyed at this point in the timeline as of Infinite and replaced. Thus, technically there have been 9 rings in the modern array, which again are described by the Covenant via metaphors of sacred flame and such. Thus you could see the entire Halo array as symbolic of Dante's Inferno now.
Are you sure?
I shall light this holy ring, release its cleansing flame, and burn a path into the divine beyond!
Pretty much.
In addition to the obvious religious elements, they are very hierarchical, literally having a species-based caste system that affects everything in their society from daily life to war. In addition, the Covenant leadership has wielded military force against any uprisings trying to change said caste system. There is no avenue within its systems for an order from someone of a higher rank to be overruled, regardless of how many beneath them oppose it. Their leaders simultaneously wield full authority of all institutions accessible to members of the Covenant, such as, say, the military, church, and economy, for example. Lastly, the quote-unquote divine right to rule is also certainly an aspect at play with the authority of the prophets. So, okay, we've firmly established a connection here between Halo's Covenant and many religious institutions throughout the world, as well as throughout time. Now, what does Halo 2 have to say about them?
What would you have your Arbiter do?
Well, given the fact they tried to genocide humanity, and by the end of the campaign they're enemies for both the Chief and the Arbiter, clearly Halo 2 takes a highly critical lens of them. But why? What's bad about the idea of religious institutions, and what is Halo 2 saying about it? There's a lot of different angles you can come at this from, but rather than an anti-theistic argument, Bungie went with a more anti-authoritarian message, I believe. After all, with an open mind, you can see things in the Covenant culture metaphorically making a lot of sense with reality. Is it horribly inaccurate to describe these colossally highly advanced ring worlds as sacred? Despite their obvious moments of occasional villainy, are the monitors not, with all of their knowledge, oracles in a way? For the game's message to be an anti-theist one, the game would have to directly and actively refute all of these religiously analogous metaphors that tie to the Covenant's beliefs, but it clearly doesn't. If you're familiar with the deeper lore of the prophets speaking to mendicant bias and finding out humans were deemed to be reclaimers by the Forerunners, you'll recall that the Covenant populace was not made aware of this knowledge, despite members of the group that were having this discussion, who were a group of prophets kind of high up in the hierarchy. They were openly acknowledging that to hide this information and declare war on humanity would go against their very faith. And in an act of greed to maintain their total control, the prophets knowingly misled all of those under their authority in a war on the Reclaimers. I think this is evident that really the highlight of Halo 2's main message is to be hypercritical of religious hierarchies. Not for them having a personal faith, but rather due to the very systems of exploitation we're told to be vigilant about when it comes to our government. Obviously, this isn't any disrespect to any folks of these faiths, but for example, last I checked, popes aren't voted for by the vast population of Catholics across the world. Your ideal imam isn't exactly a choice on any Sunni's ballot. And here in the United States, as well as online, I see all sorts of movements movements, especially a lot of Christian ones, obviously being in the US. But despite seeing Catholic movements on a wide range of topics from folks who self-identify all across the political spectrum, I don't ever remember seeing or hearing signs or chants about we should get to elect our popes ourselves. I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't, but what I am saying is that is something, that right there is what Halo 2 is critical of. Not the faith, nor the practitioners, but giving unquestioning support to the leadership within any institution. Even when looking at the infamous cut third act of the Halo 2 storyboards, Bungie were trying to tell the same message. Even in the very end, when the Prophets are defeated, he is allied with Chief, and is now following 343 Guilty Spark in a collapsing ark that was originally going to be on Earth. Just listen to how often he uses religious language with Spark. By the way, credit to C3 Sabretooth for that beautifully made video. There's a whole series on the cut storyboards. I'll have that linked below if you somehow haven't seen that already. Genuinely some of my favorite content on YouTube. Can't recommend it enough. Moving on, even the very last panel in the arc with the Arbiter gives us this beautiful and very sacred feeling depiction of the Arbiter, just holding Spark above him as he ascends to safety. So yeah, this anti-authoritarian critique of religious institutions was clearly the intentional goal throughout the entirety of Halo 2's development, and it turned out fantastic in the final release as well, in my opinion. But yeah, that's it for today. Be kind to yourselves out there, and have a good one.